We laugh. We cry. We learn. But really, what doesn't kill you makes you better at managing clients and everyone. I'm Morgan Friedman, and this is Client Horror Stories.
Welcome back, everyone, to the latest episode of Client Horror Stories. I was excited already to have Paul Flowers on, but when he just showed up a moment ago with a cigar and a whiskey in hand, I am even more excited for tonight's episode. Welcome aboard, Paul.
Morgan, thank you so much for having me. As we did our conversation prior to, you said it's like two friends at a bar sharing a story. So I just so happened to be on actually working and for my transportation business. And I said, you know what? I'm more excited to do this show at a bar than any other show I've ever done, because this is truly a first for me too. So I said, you said two friends at a bar. Well, I'll be at the bar.
Paul, I love it. Like you've already won me over. I will say I've had maybe 80 episodes recorded now, and I always tell everyone, two friends having a drink. I'm having an Irish coffee. As always, I'm a little bit addicted to that. Excellent. But no cinnamon. You're the first one to actually take it from an actual bar. So you get a gold star.
Thank you so much.
And with that, I'm super excited to jump into your horror story. Tell us about your most painful client experience.
It's a love-hate thing. When you love what you do, and not that a person or an organization can make you hate it, but damn near, right? But damn near. And I remember this client, we decided that we're going to work together, and ultimately I was going to get people to sell their stuff, right? So I work in healthcare, and it's they had this really great communication strategy that they needed to sell to people and all that good stuff. And they sold it through what's called a broker, people who would actually go out and do business with other companies. And I'll be damned if I just thought this was the best thing since sliced bread after learning about some of the new and famous things that they were getting ready to do and that they wanted me to essentially sell. But again, I'll be damned that once you peel back the layers of the onion, you realize that it's a sales position, right? We're contracted to do sales, to get people to sell. Don't you need a CRM in sales? Usually. I mean, maybe that's just me. But I think that if there are people on here that are listening that have ever been in any sales position, they would say, what's the number one tool that helps you to maybe stay organized and track your deals and ultimately do your work? It's a CRM. Morgan, I get there, and this 30-plus-year-old company doesn't have a CRM.
So question. Approximately how many employees is the company? Because something I found, you're 100% right. Every company needs a CRM. I know lots of 5-people company that not worth the energy will use a spreadsheet.
Yeah, try 250. Plus an international arm that works in several countries. Okay, so in no way, shape, or form were they at a lack of both A, resources, and B, people, right, talent that would be able to utilize this. But as I come to learn, again, you peel back the layers. They've never really been a sales organization. There's never really been a sales type feel to the company. It was old mom and pop type of thing, and grew from there. So what I was doing was technically new. And
I see. I see. So interesting comment. Something I've seen in my experience, also my general observation of the tech world, is companies are started by someone, the founders, and every founder has their own personality, and their personality permeates the culture and type of people hired forevermore. And so as a tech startup guy, like here's some patterns that I see. Google was started by two engineers. As a result,
Mhm.
within Google, the coolest kids, the highest paid kids, every decision is made by an engineer, like an engineer. And as a result, they're amazing at engineering. How do they do it so fast? But like, it's ugly. It kind of sucks at everything else. Compare, for example, to Apple. Apple effectively started by this guy obsessed with design. So like
Mhm.
at Apple, like Johnny Ive, like the design, beautiful. The designers are the most highly paid people. Everything is about
Mm.
design, and like the sales engineers, second rate. And also, as another example, Salesforce.com, founded by the consummate, ultimate salesman. And as a result, it's like everything about the company is designed for sales to make it easy, to make it smooth, upsell, everything else. And the engineers, designers there are kind of the losers.
That's it. I think you hit the nail spot on the head, and that's one of the things that again I found out, down the line. It turns out that the founders, were no longer with us, and rest in peace to them. Yet, in some conversations that I've had with some colleagues, they let me know that there's a deer. Sorry, I usually don't have
Wow.
ooh squirrel moments, but the fact that I'm outside at this bar and there's a deer literally 100 feet in front of me, is pretty cool. So not only do we have the guy at
Wow.
the bar with a drink and a cigar, there's wildlife here as well joining us
We're
for the
getting we're
show.
getting so many firsts for tonight's episode. This is exciting.
So I found out that the founder at a point, prior to passing, actually told the people in the company to slow down bringing people on because they didn't want to grow quickly. And this was years before I'd gotten there. I just had one of those moments. It was like, like, wait, what? What? You have a product that can be used in a number of different environments, and you don't want to sell it? Okay, okay. I think that would have been one of those good things to know, right? Going into it, that the history essentially, the deer stopped in the parking lot and looked at me.
You can invite the deer to
Yeah,
join
that
our
I
podcast.
promise you, if it came over, I would actually be a little frightened. Not be full transparent, but I think I'd really
If you
love it. So,
if you want to move the camera so we can see it, that would be fun.
right there, there's a deer.
Oh yes, I see it. I see it. Oh,
There's a
man,
deer.
this is hysterical.
Not that they come like dogs, but that would be hilarious if it actually just came over and maybe had a drink. So it's real nature out here, and I can appreciate that.
Amazing.
So it's just one of those things that my lesson learned was to not just understand the foundation story, like the origin story, but to truly understand how the founders thought about their business, right? How they saw the vision for their company in years to come, so that I can have an understanding of where I'm in alignment and where I'm out of alignment, such that I can either again make the decision to hands off from the very beginning, or to embrace it with an understanding that these things are okay. These things we may have to come to some sort of agreement on in order for me to move forward. And yeah, it was when we say a
Okay.
horror story, it only got worse from there.
So okay. So we're having all these fun tangents. We're not
Cool.
getting to this story. So I'm excited. So you started at this old company, 250 people, enough money, but they have zero CRM, and it turns out the reason is they were never serious about sales, and you show
Period.
up,
As the sales director,
sales guy.
as literally I'm here for sales. I need some tools. And when I tell you we had to twist arms to get a single user uh, CRM, it was literally like pulling teeth. Like they're using SharePoint, for crying out loud. Like this is
SharePoint.
I don't know if I can drop an S
So
bomb. Can I drop an S bomb on the show?
absolutely. It's
I can't make this shit up. Okay, I can't make this shit up.
so
So
I
yeah,
mean,
we were
so
using SharePoint.
if they're using SharePoint, then this story was around what, 1995?
It seems like it, right? It seems like it. This was less than 2 years ago. This is recent.
Oh my God.
Okay, we're talking 2024, 2023, 2024. So it really was surprising at that point that given the things that had gone on with the company, the growth that was supposed to be happening, that we're just going to use SharePoint. So okay,
So-
I'll use
Wait,
that.
so I'm going to do another fun interruption, parenthetical for 1 minute, then we'll get back
Sure.
to the story. There's another lesson
Sure.
just up to this point so far that's worth sharing for the audience, which is you didn't realize all these things until after you started. And so, like, one really important tip is before you start the work to figure out what things you really need to know. And often there's like a discovery period, but so often it's really superficial. But one of the challenges is before even accepting the offer to figure out, okay, what are the real challenges that I need to know going in?
That's it. That's it. And I like to take full responsibility. The other thing that I didn't realize was that I was the only person of color at the company. And not that that was an issue per se, up until I asked the question about why we have a meeting on Juneteenth, or no, why isn't Juneteenth marked as a holiday, given that it's a federal holiday?
Federal holiday.
And you can use a floating holiday or something like that if you need to take it off. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then they made sure to schedule a meeting on that day so that to make sure that I was present. I'm like, oh, well that's interesting. I should have just taken off. But again, the writing was on the wall. Right. There were some tasks that I were assigned, and nothing's impossible, right, to a person that's a doer. The fun part about the task, though, was that it literally required, I mean, again, anything can be done. To make it easier, it required something like an automation that didn't exist at the company.
Yes.
So I had to use 2 computers to communicate with over 500 people prior to an event that they wanted me to appear at, and shake hands, kiss the babies, that type of thing.
I don't understand what you mean by you had to use 2 computers to contact people.
So I had an assistant. I could have done it all from one. So again, I'll take responsibility. In the vein of making life simpler, my assistant was my wife, and because there was no automated way to email more people than one, I chose to use 2 computers, log in on one, log in on the other, and send these emails out individually, meaning one by one by one by one by one. Because again, just the technology wasn't there to do any sort of mass email or anything like that. So it was a pain. It was a pain. But they wanted the communication out there prior to me showing up. So it's like, well, this is how I do it. And then it turns around and it becomes a bad thing, right? To let anyone else that's not officially an employee to use your computer. Okay, lesson learned. Don't make things efficient in a place that thrives on inefficiency. So there was my learning, right? There was my learning.
Okay, well, let's unpack this a little bit. So you go into this company to lead sales, not knowing that there's nothing, and you actually have to build everything up from scratch. There's not even a basic system. You try to get them to buy, implement, build a system, and they completely reject you. So they're like, no, use spreadsheets or pen and paper.
And in all fairness, it was use SharePoint, and attempting to use SharePoint was again like an antiquated dinosaur,
right?
Attempting to do this
in 2024. In 2024, use this technology that anyone who's been in the tech world knows that SharePoint was last updated in 1994. So use this 30-year-old technology where you click, have to wait 2 minutes, and then just to do the next click, I feel the pain. So it's so ridiculous and absurd. You're like, dude, I'm just gonna use my second computer and get my wife to help me out. And
manually
so it's right. So because of this ancient system, you cannot send an email to more than one person at a time. So
Right.
either you could just spend your whole day wasting click, wait, and send 10 emails per day because it's SharePoint, or you could say, "Hey, wifey, can you help me out?" And have the second computer doing it. So you said, best option is to have her help me out. But then the company freaks out at you because you're like, no, you're not allowed to.
You would have thought that I broke into the main office and took all the IP and put it on the open source market for everyone to use and enjoy, type of thing, right? Like I took their servers and put them on eBay. It was that bad that the person that's married to me, sitting right behind me in our 12 by 10-foot office, it's such a bad thing. So it was very challenging, to say the least. And we decided to cut ties amicably well before the time period that essentially we were slated to stay until, because I realized it just wasn't going to work, right? If we don't have the creativity, if we don't have the for all intents and purposes freedom to act on the best behalf of the company, what the hell are we doing? What the hell is the point in doing this? But again, as you realize that sometimes people like to grow things at their own pace, low and slow, easing on into it, take a million years type of thing, and still be light years behind when people are moving at light speed. It's a choice, right? And the choice was to basically no longer be associated with that entity.
Okay, so a few questions to dig in, so we can extract a few more interesting lessons. These are great lessons so far, and we're going to get a few more. You said that they really disapproved of your wife helping you and the two computers and so on, but I'd love to hear some specific examples. Like, do you remember specific things they said?
Absolutely. The chief technical officer at the company sent an email at a point and realized that I had logged on twice, like simultaneously. And I didn't pay it any mind, but at a point, I purchased on my own some technology to help me with future mailings that we can do en masse to really get us out there in front of the people that need to see us. So I let them know, hey, I'm going to start sending out some mass emails. I want to make sure that our sender score is good and all these little technical nuances. And I said,
Yes.
oh, by the way, when you saw me logged on twice, I apologize. I didn't respond to that email a couple of weeks ago. That was just my wife was helping me send some emails prior to this event. And you could have heard an ant pass gas. It got so quiet for like 2 seconds.
Gas.
And he says, oh, wait, is your wife an employee of the company? I said, no, right? She's my wife. And he said, well, look, you can't do that. You really can't do that. You can't have anybody that's not contracted or employed by the company to access company data. I said, well, it was Outlook and it's a copy and paste email. And my work computer was never right? Was never set up as a work computer because ironically enough, the tech team, the day that I started, quit working for them. So there was likely some ideas to improve tech there that they were just slow to move on. It caused them to quit the day that I started. So my work computer was effectively no different than a computer off the shelf. I even logged into Windows with my own personal email address because no one ever set my computer up. So yeah, physically speaking, it was a work computer. From an internal standpoint, my username was my email address. So it's like, well, how bad really is it when you don't care enough to set my computer up to use VPNs and all this, and I can access the same systems on any computer because that's how the system was set up.
Yeah.
But then to have somebody that I know, like, and trust and live with and married and have children and all that to help send emails, and all of a sudden this is the worst thing that could possibly happen.
So
okay.
So I actually think from this detail you just shared, there are two really, really interesting lessons that are worth mentioning. And in fact, in every episode, I try to get at least one new lesson that hasn't come out before. And I think both of these, I don't remember them having come up in previous episodes. So I think we have at least 2 new lessons plus
Some more first. Let's do it.
cigar, plus a cigar and a deer.
And a drink at the bar.
So that's right, and the bar. From this detail you shared, I love the fact that they gave you a work computer, but they never set it up. So because they never set it up, when companies set up computers, they set up their security, their protections to make sure you can and can't do that, because they never did any of that with you.
Exactly.
It was off the shelf. And I just want to explain, because there's a subtlety to that, which I think is worth calling out, which is the following. All the time, I see companies that define processes. We're going to do this, and you have to follow them, but they have no way to actually implement it or follow it or make it happen. So it's kind of like sky high dreaming, because the story might be different if it were, okay, you have to do A, B, C, D. We'll send our SWAT team to do this. We'll give you this. We'll do that. We'll do that. But they have all these processes and ways to do things, and then they fulfill their part on it. Then then it makes sense to then they're following through on their part of enforcing good security, but you're the one that's not. But when they say no, when like the CTO says no, you have to do this, the security, your wife can't do this, but they don't give like the most basic setup, like the minimum requirement. Then what's happening is they enforce these sky high expectations, but they don't have the systems, tools, people in order to make it happen. And that is a formula for a disaster. Said differently, expectations of complying with policies without a realistic path for you to comply with them is a time bomb.
Mm-hmm. And it ticked until it boomed, right? And they just got. It was so interesting to to have the discussion to say, hey, look, we're not a good fit for each other, because the things that they brought up, which were these things that I'd shared. It's like, well, wait a second. I've raised these concerns, right? I've raised the fact that my computer's not been set up as a work computer for months, and no one decided to do anything about it. Okay. I've raised the fact that in order to mass communicate, you need tools of mass communication, right? I did a contract with a startup in again, the health and wellness space, and I 9x'd their output in terms of exposure within 90 days. So their entire team,
wow,
I think in this one period had like 400, 300 and something exposures, right? New contacts added into this. I had 2.7. So just under 3,000 contacts in the same time period, right? But it's because they use Salesforce, and I've, taken some classes, so I understand how to use Salesforce. And when I say we got so much business in the pipeline to the tune of 40 plus million in the pipeline before, unfortunately, as a startup, it needed to be better capitalized and organized. And that was another story, but they ended up having to shut down. So, que sera. But the fact is that, you brought me in here because I know how to do this thing, because I've done this thing, right? I've done it, matter of fact, multiple times. And you brought me in here to do this thing with a group of people that I'm known in that environment of, and I know how to speak to, because I'm also one of them, right? Outside of this. And I got, we like to do it our way. Okay.
So my favorite detail of the story was the reaction to your wife using the computer. I think we got a great lesson from that about the risk of your client or the team you're working for enforcing policies, but without giving you the tools to actually comply with it. But there's actually a second and separate lesson that's also new for this podcast that to come from that same detail, which is the following. I've also seen companies set up policies and rules you have to follow and get angry at you for things that are wildly disproportionate for the size and mission of the company and the team. So really enforcing the security. Wait, your wife looked at it, you logged into the computer 2 times. Even if they didn't give you the tools to do that and didn't help, there's so many cases where I would be on their side. For example, I would be on their side if this were a DoD, a Department of Defense contract, and
Exactly.
and they
Absolutely.
were giving you information about the bombing that they're about to do tomorrow for this.
Yeah.
And dude, even if the guys haven't come up to set your computer yet, no way in the universe should you, like, who is your wife anyway? And by
Right.
the way, like, guys being married to spies, it's a thing. Not
It's a
like
thing. It's
not,
real. It's
yeah,
real.
it's like the real. But could, like, as a Bay Area tech startup guy, I'm like, like, every white guy I know there has an Asian wife born in China. That's
Right.
pretty.
Right.
And I'm like, dude, I'm not Chinese, but if I were the dictator of China, I would be like
I would.
training hot Chinese women as spies, sending
Go
them
get them. Go get them.
sending them to the Bay Area to pick up the nerds there, and I would do that. How do you know whether they're actually doing or not? So what I mean to say is, depending on the industry, the space, the size of the company, your policy, protocol requirements, including security requirements, vary wildly differently. So here, part of the ridiculousness of this and like the challenge of it is like, dude, like, you're just a salesman that just started, and like, you're not dealing with classified plans to build
At all.
the next nuclear bomb. You're not at all. You're just like sending emails to try to get people interested in your product, whatever it
That's
is.
That's it. And here, I'll throw another wrench in there for you. The really interesting part that made me chuckle, because again, we had to come to terms that we just couldn't work with each other, was that not the CTO, but the gentleman whom was effectively my lateral, because he knew no more about how to operate this business than I did. He met my wife before I ever contracted with the company on a boating event in the city, right? So not only is this ridiculous, number one, not only do I not have the tool set up in a way that it's a communication tool that we're offering, right, that the company was offering. So it's not like you said, it's Department of Defense, DOJ type of stuff. But you met the person that was sharing it, right? She's just had a baby, and she's 3-4 months postpartum at this point, maybe 3-4 months postpartum, and is sitting around, wants something to do. So I enlist her to assist. And when I say, it was like, you could see, and we were remote, so I couldn't really see it, but you could just see them turning red, like that this was happening. And when I articulate to them how this doesn't make sense, that this is such a major issue, given all the things that we'd already discussed, I had nothing to say. Nothing to say. Nothing that could actually justify them wanting to put an X on my profile, so to speak. So, yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting, to say the least.
Okay, so for these few months, from day one, you're dealing with all these disasters, and then how did it go for you guys to part ways?
A meeting with the senior at the company. Basically, I say that kind of tongue in cheek, because he was also a senior at the company, and the human resources department, just to talk about returning the company equipment and how we would have to facilitate that. And I'm like, hey, we had a contract, so there are some things that need to be honored in this contract. And because I'm not at liberty to go into all the detail, let's just say, we made sure they honored the contract. I'll say that much.
Makes sense. Was there, so before like the official breakup with them, was there a particular moment, or like, what was the moment when you realized, dude, it's not going to work out? Because often when these things kind of like slowly blow up, there's like, okay, because frustrations are normal. Every company has its issues and its bumps. Absolutely. But there's like always a moment when you're like, okay, this is going to end at some point soon.
And it was actually those two things where, when the CTO just was like pissing his pants from afar, and I told him this off the record. Now, I didn't have to bring this up. This was something that would have literally gone under the rug and unacknowledged or unnoticed but I'm wanting to be transparent about the fact that we don't have the tools. And the only reason it came up in conversation was because I purchased a tool in order to do this mass mailing, again, to get us from no one knows who the hell we are to at least everyone is brand aware that this is a space that we operate in. And so for me, it was the taking advantage of my transparency. And when I said it, I said, hey, look, off the record, this is what happened. And the fact that we take off the record, and, you know, I'll say as men, as humans, really, you know, anybody that gives their word, as a human to another human, I say, look, off the record, this is what I needed to do because this is the time period that we had. And I was given this task of operating and reaching out to all these people. There's no way that I would have been able to sit and do that by myself. I mean, yes, I could have, but it would have required a lot more than what they were paying me. Okay. So it was that. And oh, you know what? There was another instance. So I had an event scheduled. Here's the funny part. It was a cigar and whiskey
Look
event.
at that. Love it. It all ties in.
And I had it set at a very, very classy cigar lounge in the Chicagoland suburbs where I was a member. So we had the VIP level was below ground. And when I say the room was decked out with all the leather couches, the multiple big screens, the fireplace, I mean, it's still to this day, the classiest cigar lounge that I've had the opportunity to go and visit. And this is where the event was. And everyone was okay with the event, from the CEO to the senior at the company. Everyone was okay with the event. The irony was, because the event was posted from the company's LinkedIn and had CEOs from all over the Chicagoland area that had registered to come to this event, right? People that we were prospecting. Because again, in the healthcare space, people enjoy a cigar and enjoy a drink, and this is just what they do, right? Brokers and insurance professionals, that's what they do. So you have an event to meet people where they're at. And because it was posted from the company's page, a week before the event, after all these people RSVP'd, the senior at the company tells the marketing guy, yeah, just go ahead and take that down. I say, wait a second. What? And then I didn't had zero communication with me, zero communication. The only way that I found out was when I was going to pull the guest list a week in advance to then just kind of, you know, warm them up a little bit more prior to coming, remind them and all that stuff. I couldn't find the event. And I'm like, hey, my gentleman in marketing, what's going on with the event? Oh, you know, our senior pal here said that, you know, we couldn't promote it from the company webpage. What? The company's logo is on the flyer. They said, oh, yeah, well, he can do it from his own page, meaning me to do it from my own LinkedIn page. So I then redid it from my own LinkedIn page. But it made zero difference because the company's name is still on the flyer. And at that point, it's like, well, wait a second. You're okay with me doing it from my page, but not the company's LinkedIn page, where the company is highlighted in LinkedIn. You know how LinkedIn, you know, it has the hyperlinks and you can click and go directly to the company, aside from the company's name and logo being on the flyer. It's like, what other purpose other than sabotaging a highly successful event with our actual prospects? Like, what was the other purpose of getting rid of this event with zero communication to the person that was hosting it? Outside of, again, we're just going to make it work a little bit harder. That was when I realized this wasn't going to work out. Because when I say I busted my ass, and I had a lot of contacts that I'd either met personally or met through LinkedIn and kind of warmed up to me as a being to then trust me enough to come into this event, to have it just wiped away. Oh man, I sat back and, you know, it's all in the rearview mirror, so we can laugh about all of this stuff. And that's really what I'm doing. It was funny to me, honestly, that as humans, we don't get the opportunity to connect and have a conversation about things that may not work in ways to, you know, resolve the issue. But instead, one uses their, you know, seniority or superiority, so they perceive, in order to make a judgment call, which at the end of the day, yes, it decreased the number of participants that ultimately showed, but we still had a great event, and the company still paid for it. and reimbursed for it. So it's like, well, what was the point? And I just, I laugh at things like that at this point.
So this is, I enjoy this anecdote within the anecdote about this event. And to me, this is a huge red flag event in a particular way, which is, say, my interpretation of it at least, is that the problem wasn't so much the senior person wanted to cancel it. Okay, I'll throw an A-bomb. He's an asshole, and yeah, and that. But it would have been very different if he communicated and spoke to you about it, because it's one thing, because there's a hierarchy, and if someone up on the hierarchy wants to do something different, okay, like the person higher up on the hierarchy wins. But the respectful and healthy way to do it is to speak to the people below. Hey, Paul, I know you're new and you're organizing this event and it's looking like it's going to great. I want to talk to you about it because I think whatever the reason is, I think it's an off-brand than the brand image you want to promote, or whatever the reason is. If he spoke to you about it openly, that's very different than secretly going to the marketing guy and telling him that. And it's incredible to me how many bombs happen just because people don't speak directly to the person responsible and instead go in roundabout ways to avoid it.
Mm-hmm. That was the piece for me. It was the, and again, human to human, the lack of respect and transparency and communication. Had I been given at least an hour notice, I could have at least saved all of the individual 40 plus people. The room could only fit 12, but 40 plus people had RSVP'd. So, half of them weren't going to show. So that's, down to 20. And then the other half, if it rained or something, they would have flaked out. So the amount of people that had reserved their place was enough to, we purchased wine for the event. We had some whiskey for the event. We purchased cigars for the event. So they can just come and we can have a few conversations and really get to know each other as people. All I needed was an hour, maybe even half an hour, in order to make sure that I could get the list of people that had already confirmed, and then I can re-invite them when I reposted the event, which there was no problem with, mind you. So I can re-invite them and have them reconfirm when I repost the event from my personal page. All I needed was a half an hour. And the fact that I couldn't get the courtesy for that, Morgan, is really what, again, that was the kind of the straw that broke the camel's back.
Wow, I love it. This is such a good lesson. And one way I would frame this is small acts of communication go a really long way. Just that half hour, just telling you just avoided so many bombs. And it's just incredible to me how many of these bombs are self-inflicted, because people don't want to have an awkward conversation. And and in fact, wanting to avoid the awkward conversation often creates more problems than having the awkward conversation. Hey, your event is off brand, we're going to do it. Much worse is not telling you, secretly canceling it. You get angry, you can't get the leads, and ultimately is one of the key causes that lead to you leaving. What a disaster.
Yeah. So it was, and I'm a human, they're humans. We were born in different generations, several generations apart. And actually, being a person who studied that, Dr. Tim Elmore had a great book, talked about the new diversity. And the new diversity had nothing to do with our usual diversity, right? Being the physical. It had everything to do with the generational diversity.
Oh, that's interesting. I never quite thought about that.
At any given time in a workforce, like today, I think this is the first time that there were, and please don't quote me on this, but I believe that there are 5 different generations in the workforce at present, right? 5.
Oh.
So we've got the silent generation, essentially, are the retirees. We've got the boomers, the Gen X, the millennials, the Gen Z, right? Are all in the workforce at the same time. And one of the things that I realized, I introduced him at an event, and it was a great event. And he talked about this, is that many like human resource teams and executive teams do not actually, they don't train on this. So there's a big gaping hole of opportunity for the right persons that understand this and can help to create the cross generational communication that will make the difference for leadership teams, for human resource teams all across the country. A phenomenal opportunity.
I never thought about cross generational diversity. I think I personally should be more diverse in that way because I'm a total Gen X elitist. I'm personally at the very bottom of Gen X, but I have a very Gen X worldview. Like
Gotcha.
these Gen Zers and the younger people I know, it's like they get offended if like their favorite cafe doesn't have any soy lattes today, and and the boomers, the generation above mine, like the olders and the silent ones, like my parents' generation, is like, okay, your generation was in charge for a long time, caused all these problems and all these companies. You're like living in outer space. So I like my generation. We busted our chops, saw 9/11 ourselves, and go Gen X.
Cheers, cheers, cheers. Right. And admittedly, I'm actually a millennial, right? But the gray often puts me in the Gen X category. Ironically enough,
you are passing. You are passing for a Gen Xer when you're not.
Gen X passing. That's it.
This is funny. I've read about like racial passing, but I've never heard about generational passing.
Generational passing. That's it. I'm truly, again, admittedly, and I can't say, take this out. No, we want this in there, and it's a real thing, right? I'm actually Gen X passing. I am a millennial, born in 1984, and it's the gray again that provides that distinguished look. It just so happens though that my mom being a boomer, I would grow up hanging out with her and her friends. Obviously, my sister is a millennial, also just a few years older than myself. And I'd always hang out with older people. So my natural, kind of attraction is to older people, but I always had the friends my age and younger, so I could relate to and mesh with them also. So it's a weird kind of bridging the gap sort of thing that I've got going on and really just learned to embrace.
Yeah, that makes sense. This episode has been so interesting. Any final observations, comments, words of wisdom that you want to share, or did all of the points that you wanted to make come out already?
I'm glad you'd asked that question a little bit earlier, because that last point was the other point that I wanted to make sure to bring up. And to kind of summarize the words of wisdom part, it would be to, and this is quoted, paraphrase from a mentor of mine, inspect what you expect. And I don't necessarily like to use the word expect because it provides a something that is invisible for another person to live up to. And I've heard it said several times that if you set expectations, you set yourself up for disappointment, right? I prefer to operate in the world of agreements. And agreements, typically from a linguistic standpoint, are where two people understand the same thing. So my words of wisdom would be to seek agreements in any endeavor that you're going to go upon. If you're starting a new business, if you're signing a new contract, if you're bringing on a new client, which I just brought on a new client on 2 days ago. Matter of fact, they send back the contract today. So I was really, really excited about that. But everything was laid out in the contract. Everything was laid out as far as what I would do, what my deliverables would be, my service level agreement, everything. So there wasn't an expectation on what they think that I should do. The contract outlined exactly what it is that I would do. And they asked for no modifications to it. Everything went smoothly. And we're countersigned and sent back. And we're just, at this point, waiting to begin the operational piece. So get agreement in your life. And that agreement, when properly communicated between two human beings, will absolutely make the difference in every endeavor. And, we're talking about this in a professional sense. And the personal piece is almost just as, if not more important. Getting agreement with your spouse, getting agreement with your children, getting agreement with the rest of your nuclear family, right? These are agreements that if we put these things in place, Morgan, when I tell you that people will have so much more abundant and enriching lives, I couldn't scream it loud enough from the rooftop. So my best words of wisdom is to get agreement and then get going.
Beautiful words. I never quite thought about it in that way, but I agree. It's
Perfect.
Well-
Thank you.
well said. Thank you for coming and for being a guest. It's an honor. Very interesting and different conversation than usual. And everyone who's made it this far to the end, we hope that you've enjoyed it as much as we had. Thank you for watching, and good night.
Bye for now.